Hi, and welcome to the World Tour of Meditation. Our purpose here is to dispel popular myths around meditation and redefine it so that a lot more people can really access deep inner peace, calm, and joy. Today, I'm so thrilled to have with us Albers, who is a world renowned angel communicator, spiritual guide. And Anne, is there anything you would like to add to that?
Well, people call me a lot of things, but I I think the bottom line is I've learned how to surrender, and in surrender to spirit or God or the divine, you get to talk to angels, you get to talk to animals, you get to talk to anything that talks because everything lives within that spirit. So those are all formal titles and they're wonderful, but I tell people I just open up and surrender and talk to anything that wants to talk and channel anything that wants to come through with a positive, loving vibration.
And how would you, so the other day I was working at a bookstore and someone walked in and, they started talking to me something about crystals because crystals seem to be all the rage right now.
Uh-huh.
I was like, you just talk to a crystal the way you talk to a friend. And this person was like, but crystals aren't living. What would you say to that?
Well, I would say that everything is made of pure source consciousness. So there's an energy in the universe that we call God or the divine or love, and it arranges itself in so many different forms. And everything has a consciousness to it. For example, the trees in the forest communicate with one another, but just because they don't do so in abstract concepts in English doesn't mean they're unconscious. They have a living vibrating energy to them. And likewise, and I'm going to laugh because right before we tuned in, the angel said, "Get a big crystal and put it in front of you." And I mean, I didn't know why. I love crystals, but I don't. It's not my specialty. But right away, beforehand. So the consciousness of a crystal really is not like ours. It doesn't speak English, but it emits an energy field. And its energy can communicate with our energy, and then our brain will interpret that in words in English. So,
Mm.
for example, this is a fun start. You pick up a crystal and you say, "Okay, what do you do?" And you hold it in your next to your heart, maybe, and you feel something, and the feeling will turn into words. But it's just emitting its natural beingness, and in that, it helps us understand more. How we can use it. Now, some crystals, for example, because of their biological structure, they're very organized. They can channel energy. For example, a laser, the original lasers were rubies because rubies have a very highly defined electronic structure or atomic structure that allows the light to go through it like a screen, and all this light that's going in all different directions goes through it and gets filtered into a very narrow and straight line. That's simplistic, but they channel energy and they straighten it out.
Yeah,
So
original lasers, this is blowing my mind. The original lasers were like a beam of light hitting a ruby.
yeah, and I mean that's very oversimplified, but yes. So so when you hold a crystal, it's got an atomic structure that's very structured, like a matrix or a lattice, or very highly ordered. So you can think of them as little filters for energy and light, at a physical level. Like if you put if you had a strainer and you put water through it, it would come out in all the little holes very straight.
Right, of course. Or if you're sifting flour and
Yeah,
dusting.
exactly. Yes, exactly like that. So crystals are kind of like sifters for energy, and they straighten it out. So there's a consciousness to them that's not abstract and it's not English, but it has a being and it has an energy and it has even physical properties that can help channel light. So
That's so cool.
yeah, it is cool. It's amazing. Everything has an energy. I've tuned into bugs and rocks and just, and again, they don't speak English, but they emit vibration.
So how did you first start feeling vibration?
Well, I think I came in very sensitive, and as I've done this work, I've found that there are so many empathic people out there, people who feel everything deeply. And
Hmm.
so I think a lot of us, especially as children, before we're taught to shut down a little bit, we are connected with the world around us. I believe that since we have a physical body, that body has radar, if you will, natural abilities, yeah, to tune in to the world around us. And some people do it through the crown, some do it through the gut. The gut, they're finding out that the actual physical gut reads energy and that it has more nerve cells than the actual brain. And they're calling it the enteric brain now. They're actually calling the gut a brain. And it's about time because we sense things in our physical body, and all of us have that ability. Now, to a degree, people have shut it down, some are more open. So I was very sensitive as a child, and I talked to everything. I really would pick up a rock and I'd talk to it, or I'd talk to the trees, and everybody thought I had this wonderful, vivid imagination. And I didn't know, so I just assumed I had a great imagination. And I grew up Catholic, so in that tradition, we believe in angels, and we had the little prayer you prayed before bed to your guardian angel. But in my imagination, I would talk to them in my head and just assume that I was having these, like a child has these wonderful imaginary conversations with everything.
What did they say back to you?
Very simplistic things like you're loved, or try to behave, or just little things.
Try to behave.
Well, Aries anyhow. So, but I remember that it started driving me crazy, because I would literally get a sense of a rock saying to me, could you pick me up and move me over here, please? I'm a little bored. And just, and around early teenage years, I remember telling the world around me to please shut up, because I was tired of hearing all these little voices in my head asking me to move them, or could you come touch me, or something like that, just inanimate objects. I thought, I'm crazy, I don't want to hear this. So I shut down. And I didn't think anything of it. It didn't feel like anything was missing. I guess I needed to be a normal teenager, or as normal as I got, because I didn't do all the, addiction things that a lot of them did. But when I grew up, I became an avionics engineer. And about several years into it, I realized I didn't love it. And, a lot of the other engineers loved it. I mean, I had gone to college. My parents had paid for all that. I was doing avionics. It was kind of cool and prestigious.
As well, too.
Yeah. And, and then all of a sudden you wake up and you say, that's not me. So I started praying, and I said, God, whoever, whatever you are, just help me figure this out. I want to wake up happy, go to bed grateful, and make a living helping people. That's all I knew. And life started to change. I started getting guided to teachers and people that once again reminded me that there was a world bigger than my solid reality. And long story short, I learned to open up once again to my intuitive abilities, and God took over. And now for years I've been connecting with angels and helping people heal, and just swimming in a world of energy now. And it's an ongoing journey.
What is your daily morning routine like, if you have one?
It varies depending, but most of the time I get up and I like to have a little glass of lemon water, just because that's good for the system, warm lemon water. And then this is lately, I got involved with something called the Wim Hof method. He's a guy from the Netherlands that discovered a breathing method and some cold exposure that can help boost the immune system. I started doing this because I was terrified of cold water, and I past life stuff. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to face it. And so, believe it or not, a year later after doing this, I get in a cold shower every morning for a few minutes. And it puts me into an instant meditation, because either you get into a very calm, present state,
Or you panic?
or you panic and freeze, So it's kind of a tool I've learned to use to just zap me no matter what I wake up with. Like this morning, I woke up and I had some funky energy around, and you get in the cold shower and you take one deep breath and everything's gone but the present moment. So that's kind of a weird little tool I use. I do that. Then I turn the warm water on and relax. I usually eat a really good breakfast. I usually do something to bring myself present as well, whether it's sitting in my backyard and observing nature, because I have a small backyard, but it's still beautiful, or whether it's reading something inspiring. But I try to do, even if it's 5-10 minutes, something to connect with something bigger than me, because then begins the emails and the clients and the gazillion million things on the to-do list. So it's not a terribly complicated routine. I often try to do 10 minutes of yoga in there too, if I've got time, because just even that little stretching and moving the body brings the energy in if I'm present. And that's why I love your work, because it's about all these, a variety of ways that we can become present. And to me, meditation really is becoming present with, that energy that lives in all of us in whatever way you do it. So it varies, some mornings I get up and have to run around a little sooner than I'd like, but most of the time I fit those basic things in.
And when you were a kid, with your beautiful imagination and attunement to all the energies and frequencies around you, Would you say that you were in that present state?
Yes, a lot. I mean, I really was one of they called me intense. Because when I was doing something, I was focused on it. I was, for example, my mother got an electronic typewriter when I was a kid, and I just was so excited about that. I got a book and I wanted to teach myself to type, and it was like an obsession. I was so present with that for a while. Or when I went out in nature, I would examine every little bug and leaf, and I, I had a garden, and I would, go out and talk to my little plants, and there was a sense of really wanting to be where I was at the time. And so, for example, now when I teach people to get present, I say just stop wherever you are and look around, and just quietly look for something cool. Look for something you haven't noticed in the room right around you, and all of a sudden, the minute you challenge yourself to look at your environment and really look for something you haven't noticed, or something that's beautiful, then take it a step further. Can I find something beautiful around me? All of a sudden you're present. I was in an ugly hotel gym once on the treadmill because it was one of those trips where you eat too much. And so I'm in this really very ugly gym. It was a small room. And I thought, well, let me get present, because my mind was wandering, and obviously, when am I going to finish this? And I thought, no, that doesn't feel good. So I'm looking around the room, and there was one piece of art in the room that I think somebody must have just thrown in there. But there was this gorgeous panel of blue in the artwork that reminded me of the ocean. And the minute I got present with that color, I was in the sky and the ocean, and I started becoming present, to something much larger than myself. It opened my heart. And all of a sudden, I was all there. And it was, and then the gym kind of, yes, it wasn't too pretty, but it seemed like the light behind it was in my consciousness. So it's a trick I use, even if you're in line at the post office, look around, find something cool and interesting, and it'll draw you into the present. The
Is there such a thing as being too present?
That's a great question. I think that I don't think you can be too present if you're truly present. I think that sometimes what happens is people get very caught up in their thoughts about what's going on in front of them, and that's not exactly present.
About meditating.
Yeah, exactly. It's because meditating really, in traditionally, of course, it's about quieting the mind. But the mind can quiet with the eyes open or shut. You can't reach theta states and brainwave states, with your eyes open, that you reach with the eyes closed. When the eyes are closed, you can reach that state where you're right in between sleep and wakefulness. That's the perfect sweet spot for all sorts of biological processes to happen. And that really has to happen most of the time with the eyes shut, because your eyes will cause certain brainwave states to happen. So, but you can still get the peace from an open-eyed meditation. You can still learn to be very present with your surroundings. For example, if you do that little exercise of looking around the room, noticing something beautiful, and then you try to take it a step further and see if you can observe your surroundings almost like a baby would, without any labels or words or judgments. And when you start just looking, something interesting happens if you can hold that state, because all of a sudden things aren't separate. It's just a picture of reality that's different but cohesive. And it will bring you into that space of starting to feel the presence of the one energy behind all things, not mentally, but just in a feeling space.
I just tried that out as you were speaking about it. It was really cool. So first I focused on this light bulb in my room.
Uh-huh.
The light bulb. And then that's what I looked at earlier when you said just pick one thing and get curious about it, like at the gym. And then I heard you say the thing about observing it like a baby would. And suddenly I kind of just started looking around.
Yeah.
Like I could almost feel like this sort of baby grin come across my face. And I there's this feeling I get when I listen to, I think Don McLean has a song about Wonderful Baby, like to do just like looking up and counting its toes,
Uh-huh. Yeah, you reach that innocent state very quickly when you do that exercise.
Yeah, I love that. I love that child thing. It just made me feel so childlike and innocent and kind of like curious about the world.
Yeah, it really is. When we reconnect with that sense of observing without judgments and labels, we become present. And we feel almost like we're just part of it all. And we are, actually. But that sense of being part of it all returns, that innocent. And just a second, I'm sorry, my computer was being silly. But anyhow, that sense of innocent returns, and we become once again rooted and feel belonging with the universe. And so it's just a little quick cheat. And the reason is I'm an ex-engineer, and I had to figure out how can we do this more quickly, because I did not have the time or the patience to meditate in a traditional way. So I had to find out, how can I get myself present more quickly? And the funny part is, now that I practice this often, now I can shut my eyes and I can just get present very quickly. It started years ago. I was rushing, and I was at a stoplight, and the angel said, "Anne, you haven't noticed the rocks in the median on the road." And I said, what? They said, be present with the rocks in the median next to your car. And I'm like, okay, play along with the angels. So I started looking at them and examining them and being present with them. And all of a sudden, it was like the whole universe went into this no time, no spacing. I saw the rocks coming out of a volcano, and then I saw them tumbling in a river, and then I saw people in trucks loading them up, and then I saw workers putting them in the road. And there I was with those rocks and their entire lineage throughout space and time. And I went, whoa, And for example, they'll say, this is tea today, but they'll say, be present with your coffee and just really look at it and be with it. And all of a sudden you start realizing, the countless souls that have put their lives into your cup of coffee, and you become present almost like throughout space and time. And I know that sounds a bit, contradictory, but when you're really fully in the now, you are connected.
So I get what you mean, because I experienced that.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'm explaining this to people, and I can tell from the way they are speaking about it that they're really still intellectually thinking about it.
Okay, here's how I explain that bit. Is if you're in an airplane and you look down, you can see a car below you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're fully present with that car, you're present with his past, his future, and where he's at right now. You're outside of his space and time, because he's on a linear road. All he sees is past behind him, present here, future here. But if you're above it, in a different state of awareness, you could see his past, his present, and his future all at once.
And how would you what is the litmus test, since you're an engineer? What is the litmus test for distinguishing between when I'm thinking about this car's past, present, and future versus when I am actually being present with and sensing it and feeling it?
Yeah, when you're thinking, you will literally notice verbal type thoughts. Oh, there's the past. Oh, there's the future. When you're present, there's no words. There's just like an observance, just as we did with the room.
Oh, like the baby.
Like the baby, yeah. And that practice of being the baby. Yeah, exactly. Because babies don't have words yet. Babies don't have words. Babies interpret energy. If you say to a baby, here's your glass of milk, they're like, now, do they know milk yet and all that? Maybe not yet, but they get the energy of it. I'm going to get fed, So I've learned a lot from just observing children in their innocence, pre-verbal states, before they can sort things out. And words are great. We use them in wonderful ways, but they do tend to separate, and that's what they're meant to do, to identify things as separate, but when you're in a non-verbal space, even in your own head, then you're more present.
That's beautifully put. Thank you.
Thank you
for asking. I have to admit, I loved your baby expression of receiving the milk. It was the cutest thing.
That's what happens when you channel. You turn into whatever you're talking about. It's so funny. It's really funny when people ask about their dogs and readings, and I want to wiggle, it's just funny. But, to me, meditation with your eyes shut is a beautiful thing, because it does put you in really deep brainwave states where you are in a mode to really have your body heal. I believe, I was lucky enough to speak at a conference in, I think, 2006, and Dr. Joe Dispenza was not well known back then, and he was speaking there. And I had a burning interest in a topic called multiple personality disorder, because I had a friend who had it. It's called dissociative identity now, but the friend would fall asleep and wake up, and she would have a different personality, and it was only an instant where she fell asleep, but that other personality would have allergies, and then she'd fall asleep and she'd wake up and the allergies would be gone instantly, or different physical conditions would come and go instantly. So I wanted to corner Dr. Joe because he was studying brains.
I've never heard of that before. So this was like a multiple personality disorder with like different physical
Yeah, and others have exhibited that. If you look up dissociative identity disorder, some of them will change physiological profiles with the switch. So I cornered Dr. Joe in the lobby and we talked, and I said, look, has anyone studied this? Because I said that's proof to me that miracles are possible if somebody with a disorder can, go into that no mind space and come out with a different biology. I said, to me, there's a switch in the brain, and that means that miracles are possible if we find the switch. And he says, yes, we're working on it. So he and I had this wonderful conversation, and I was talking with him about how it was a no mind space. And he says, yeah, we know, we just haven't, found that switch. So he's out there in a beautiful way now, having, really discovered this and shared ancient meditation techniques. He's taken ancient meditation techniques and converted them to modern methods. For example, he teaches what I jokingly call squeeze and breathe, which means you squeeze at the root, you squeeze at the sacral, you squeeze at the solar plexus as you're breathing up. So if you imagine your root chakra, your second and your third, as you're breathing, you go, and you just breathe and hold at the top of your head. And then you release. And he's scientifically studied that this forces the cerebral spinal fluid up the spine. It pushes on the pineal gland in the center of the brain. It activates a little electrical field in the pineal, makes the little calcite crystals in the pineal gland stand upright. Well, what are they? Crystals. Antenna. So, science is starting to prove that these ancient techniques for breathing and meditation activate the pineal.
in our pineal gland?
Yeah, can you imagine? He's in his book, Becoming Supernatural, he's got pictures of this. Scientific. I mean, this is the science of some of the wonderful, methods that have been around. For example, Yogananda taught Kriya Yoga, which ultimately in the advanced courses is squeeze and breathe. And, there's something called macrocosmic orbit. They would squeeze and breathe. And so these are ancient techniques, but they force the cerebral spinal fluid up. And this is why, and I wasn't even going to talk about this one, but, for example, sexuality, it's built into the human system to have an event that can cause the cerebral spinal fluid to shoot up and hit the pineal gland, and people have a religious experience, if only temporarily. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. Why do you think that happens?
Well, I think that the divine somehow knew we would have to have these touchstones of reconnecting with it, if only temporarily, that would motivate us to reconnect, in deeper ways inside of ourselves. So it's really amazing that in our very biology, there's built-in mechanisms for accessing higher states of awareness.
So beautiful.
But I didn't learn that via traditional meditation because I couldn't do it. I was an engineer. The brain would not stop.
So what were the challenges that you faced when you were doing traditional meditation? Because I think that'll resonate for people. And then what did you do?
Oh my God, my brain would not shut up. I mean, it was just, I'd sit down and, I got to do the laundry. I've got to run to the grocery store. Quiet, 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 I'm itching, it's just, how that goes. My foot's asleep. Oh, I'm never going to be able to do this, just on and on. And my very first spiritual teacher, she was a wise woman. And she would tell me, she said, sit for 4 hours, Ann, and don't try to meditate. Just sit. She said, don't meditate, just sit. Just be with your thoughts. Just be with them. Just sit. She said, don't try to do anything. Just watch your thoughts and just be with them. So I sat there and I would yak, 4 hours, just once, but it drove me nuts. So anyhow, I sat there and every thought known to man came across my head, from this is stupid, it's never going to work, to the fact that, oh my God, I didn't do that thing at work Friday. And on we go. And after about 2.5 to 3 hours, I got bored with my own thoughts because I started going in circles, the same old, same old. So then I started getting present with the room. It wasn't a conscious decision. It was just, I was bored. So I started looking around, and then it was, oh God, I've got a vacuum. I never noticed a spot on the armoire, and after about another hour of that, I got bored. And something happened where I went into that space I just described of you're just looking and you're noticing things like a baby for the first time. And I was like, whoa, this is bliss. So that helped me with that little technique I just shared with you about looking like a baby. Now, then
Before you go any further, I find that really profound for two reasons. Because my inspiration to create this entire show, The World Tour Meditation, is because the number of people I met who just said they couldn't meditate or didn't work for them was like too many people. And I thought there's got to be something that's misunderstood.
Yeah.
And in what you said, I hear two very specific conversations I've had before. One of them was someone saying that she felt like the biggest secret out there was people would listen to meditation apps and pretend to meditate, which is kind of what I hear in the sitting there and your mind is like, oh, this.
Truly.
And the other thing was a friend of mine saying to me once, when I was like, let me teach you meditation, he was just like, oh, it doesn't work for me. I get too bored.
Bored is good.
What's so interesting is the flip that I hear you say of like, well, actually, if you sit for 4 hours, studio,
Yeah.
That you end up actually getting bored with your own thoughts.
Yeah, that's the bored that actually is productive, because all of a sudden, if you can just be with the boredom, your brain says, I've got to do something else. I've got to do something else. And that was a switch for me, that's why she didn't want me to try to meditate, because then she knew me, I was type A, I'd try to do anything until I wore it out. But she just said, just be with it. And I got so bored that my brain just switched to some other activity. And finally, it just shut off, because it's like, ugh, I can't fight it. It's kind of like you can't fight it, so you might as well go with it. But it wasn't a conscious decision. It switched on its own.
So what did she say to you after that?
Good job. That's it. I didn't get any giant ego pats on the head. She was a wonderful teacher. She didn't want to feed an already large ego. It was too big, But and then I tried to meditate inwardly, because, I was trying to be spiritual, and which now I laugh at, we all are anyhow. We're just trying to figure it out that we are. So I'd shut my eyes and I'd have all these thoughts, but I came up with my own technique because I knew boredom worked. So for example, I would shut my eyes and try to relax, and I left, I didn't turn the dryer on, and I would repeat to myself in my most boring voice over and over, you didn't turn the dryer on, you didn't turn the dryer on, just inwardly. And eventually I would get sick of it and let it go. So, it's kind of like I use reverse psychology to make myself get bored with my own thoughts.
Say, that is genius. That is genius.
I had to do something because they just wouldn't stop. And I think a lot of people can relate to this, that
seeing the thoughts.
Oh my God, yeah, the thoughts just keep coming, and then it's like, oh gosh, I forgot to call somebody. I forgot to call somebody. and it's like something in my brain said, oh, get over it. Finally, that worked for me. I'm not saying it's going to work for everybody, but people can try it. And finally, I got to the point where it's like, oh, it just feels better to be quiet. I really just bored myself to tears with my own thoughts, and it finally just was like, it was almost like my brain said, I just want you all to shut up in there. and something happened where it was like, oh, I can rest, I'm quiet.
Oh, that's
yeah. And so and the other thing that helped me learning to go into quiet mind was nature, because I love nature. And I got into photography because I wanted to share the beauty of nature with my clients who were, homebound or something. And I would take the camera and I started looking for beautiful things. It goes back to that exercise. But my mind wasn't saying, is that beautiful? Is it not? It was just like that child out in nature. What's beautiful? What's beautiful? And it drew me into that state of presence. And the more you go there in any way you get there. And I mean, that's why I love your show, because really there are a million ways to get to know mind. Whatever works for you. For some people, I mean, I like cooking. I get into a meditative space when I'm chopping vegetables because they smell good, they look good, they taste good, they compel me to be in the present. I want to be in the present with my vegetables and my cooking. Some people are in the present in a meditative space with their baby or their dog. It's just an amazing thing. I tell people, start by doing things you enjoy and being present with the things you enjoy, and then you can learn to be more present with the things you don't enjoy as much later.
Thanks, Sam. That's beautiful.
Well, we've got to trick ourselves. Some of us, we've just got to trick ourselves. I mean, there are some that are just so natural at meditation, and there are a lot of us that aren't. And if I can learn to quiet my mind, I promise you anybody can. I was a type A Aries engineer. We're as mental as it gets, you know. So it took a while, but it's now my peace to sit there and just watch nature, watch the birds, or you know, and when I get in that space of just watching, like the baby does, and being present, eventually there's something neat that happens where you just want to shut your eyes and slip into that delicious silence within. It just feels good.
If someone's starting that out for the first time after hearing you, how would you recommend they practice in terms of like time and frequency?
Well, I would say, first of all, get something you like looking at, you know, because it's easier, whether it's your room or a beautiful picture, or, you know, an ocean video on YouTube without the sound or something. And just tell yourself, I'm going to do this for a minute, just a minute a day. Because believe me, in that first minute, your mind can start going all over the place. And practice for maybe a minute a day. And then when it gets more compelling, you'll find that you lose track of time and you want to practice, and you'll get irritated when your little timer goes off. And then scoot it up. So use reverse psychology with yourself rather than, no, seriously. I mean, I'm teaching the stubborn people. There are those that are more compliant with techniques that can set a timer for 15 minutes and really stick with it, but I couldn't. So instead, the angels told me, start small. You know, that 4-hour thing was just to get me to understand that space of observing like a baby. But now that I know it, I don't never have to do that again. Now I want to, you know. But if you start with just a minute a day, set a little timer on your phone and say, I'm going to observe my room for just a minute. You know, maybe 10 seconds if you have a very busy brain. Go for 10 seconds. Start small and wait until you want to go further, and then up it a little bit. And as you put it forward in increments, you'll find that eventually you're looking around and you just want to shut your eyes and feel, because it starts to feel good in your heart. It starts to feel wonderful and innocent and sweet, and you want to be with that feeling. So it's kind of like tempting yourself to return to a natural state that we forgot.
Tempting yourself. That's delicious.
Yeah, it's much easier than trying to push yourself. That doesn't work for me.
Oh,
I'm not the kind, I mean, I can push myself through physical activities and through work, but to push myself into mental states, that never work, because then my mind's telling me I have to do it while I'm trying to shut it down. You know, I've never been able to do it that way. And again, there are those who can, but I'm teaching the stubborn ones, I guess, like me. But I took a whole room full of people at a conference once. It was so beautiful. There were probably 200 people in the room, into that state of presence just by looking around the hotel room, you know, like a baby. I just guided them, you know, first look at things, and next look for something cool. Next look for something beautiful. Okay, now look at it like a baby. No words, no labels, no judgment. And there were tears coming down people's faces because they could feel the loving energy of source. The minute we get present, we feel love. It's an expansive, giddy, happy feeling. You know, it can come in different forms for different people, but it feels good. And there were people crying because they had forgotten what that felt like. It was beautiful. I was so in awe that, you know, there's these people, 1, 2, 3, and we got them into, within less than 5 minutes, meditative spaces. So it's doable. It's actually natural to us. When we come into this world, we are in a meditative space. We're in a space of wonder. We're looking at everything, you know, wow, this is all me. This is all God. This is all life. Look at how beautiful it all is, you know? And then, you know, through whatever things we want to learn, we start to separate out and individuate. And it's part of the school down here. But you can get back to those spaces by returning to that innocence. So I hope that helps people. You know, it helped me.
that's beautiful. I hope so too. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And you'll find if you do that exercise often, you slip into it more easily. You know, just looking around. You can do it at the post office. You can do it at stoplights. Don't forget to look for the green light anyhow. You can do it when you're waiting for anything. You can do it when you're in a room, a meeting room with other people at work and you get bored. You know, I used to be an engineer, and we'd go to some of these meetings and people would be going on and on and on, you know, and sometimes I didn't really need to listen. So I would start looking around at the humans with wonder. And once I got so present that I actually saw an aura with my eyes open, and I'm not prone to that. I mean, I was just being with this person who was speaking. And I remember that I didn't really need what he was saying for my own work. So I was just watching and observing, and poof, all of a sudden the colors popped in. I was, whoa,
Uh,
that's exciting. It was beautiful emerald green.
Gosh.
Yeah, it was gorgeous. And I remember thinking, why can't I do this more often? But most of the time I'm listening to the words, in a linear verbal way, and I have to, I can't be rude. So it's a little harder, but you could theoretically practice by, looking at YouTube videos and just allowing yourself to just be with what they're saying rather than trying to analyze and process every word. Watching as if you're a baby and you don't, maybe pick somebody who's speaking in a foreign language that you can't process because you don't understand.
Oh, that's such a good idea.
And
Yeah.
you just watch and you be with it and you practice. Can I get present with this person's energy rather than trying to interpret what they're saying or judge them? That's a little more advanced because we're so prone and trained to judge humans.
Right. Yeah.
But it's doable. These are just little exercises that people can pick and choose from to play around with and practice with.
I love it. I love these exercises. They're fantastic. And they're all things that you've come up with by trying and playing and seeing what works for you. So they're
Yeah, because I don't always, sometimes conventional methods work for me, not always. And when they don't, I figure there's got to be another way, because if God's infinite, there's got to be other ways. And I'll tell the angels, there's got to be another way. This can't be this hard.
Mm.
So,
I have a different line of questions now,
okay, I'm ready.
which is about the angels. And what's the question there? How does meditation, if it does, how does getting into presence help you communicate with angels?
Well, the angels like to say that their number one job is to get us present first with ourselves.
Okay.
Because your divine guidance is really what your true feelings are urging you to do. So, for example, if I notice all of a sudden that I'm hungry, the divinity is saying, would you please feed this vehicle, right now? Or if I'm present with myself first, then I'll get the urge to maybe pick up the phone, which I normally never do. I did that once. I have usually someone else to help me. And it was a woman who was calling me to say goodbye because she was taking pills to commit suicide. I never pick up the phone. That day I was so present that it was a compulsion to pick up the phone. It was not even a thought. So the angels say our number one goal first is to get you in touch with yourself, because then you'll hear our guidance. And it can come via feelings. And anyhow, she's still alive, thank God. But it can come via feelings. It can come via thoughts. Sometimes now, because I know how to shut my own thoughts off through all these exercises, I'll just say, hey guys, what's up? What do I need to know about this? And sometimes I'll hear nothing still for myself. And if I hear nothing, that means you don't need to know anything about it. It took me 3 years to realize that not getting an answer was an answer. It's kind of like everybody saying the universe is on it, just relax. But sometimes I'll hear well, for example, you've heard this one. My roof leaked a couple of weeks ago during one of our rare rainstorms, and it was a lovely sound of rain in the bathroom, but I had to get it fixed. And so I said to the angels, do you think the roofer provided by the insurance company will do a good job? And I just heard a very simple yes in my head. And my normal mode, being a former engineer, would be to have 6 quotes and, have a lot of people out to give me estimates. And I didn't want to fool with that. So because I've been quiet-minded often enough, I just said, what do you think about this? And I got very present, and I inwardly heard a little yes. Sometimes it's a little feeling of yes, it's okay. But by learning to silence your mind through these methods, even if it's just observing and then asking a question, you're going to hear or feel or sense or know an answer much more clearly. And the best thing of all is, even if you don't hear or sense angels, you'll hear the guidance that comes to you from the divine. They're just there to help you hear your inner guidance, because the angels say, if you can imagine, the divine is kind of like the brain is to the body, always sending guidance, always sending signals. The brain is constantly responding to every cell in the body. A cell says, ow, I have a need. Instantly it travels to the brain. Instantly the brain mobilizes everybody around to help that cell. And so when we're a little more able to silence the mind, we're able to reconnect with our natural urges and our natural guidance that really is a lot more simple than people think. I used to want to hear the voice of God like Moses heard it in the burning bush. Right. Do this, do that. And the angel said, we don't boss you around. We just help you understand your guidance in the present. And that's really where it comes down to it. For example, I might want to know, how am I going to get the roof fixed, the newsletter done, social media posts done, see clients all week, and the list goes on. How am I going to do all that? Well, they don't give me a plan. They tell me drop into the present, be present, and then you'll know exactly what to do now. Now. And if you can trust that every moment unfolds in grace, if you just pay attention to what the natural urges are for now,
Mm.
you know, because you're quiet minded enough to be in touch with yourself, then you get guided very easily and gracefully. And I once said, why can't you give me a plan? You know, as an engineering planner, why can't you give me a plan? And they said, yeah. Well, they said there's 7 billion people in the universe with free will, and every moment everything changes. So every moment, like the whole body changes its condition in every moment. And every moment the brain reassesses and sends out new signals to balance the entire system.
And Anne, why do you talk to the angels? How are they different from talking to the divine?
Well, they'll tell you that they're not at all different from talking to the divine because they are embodiments of the divine. For example, Archangel Michael once said, the divine knew that humanity would need a more relatable form of itself. Because when we think about the divine, this amorphous energy, you know, this energy field. But they said, what if you could take God's protection and give it a form of a very masculine, hunky angel and give it an image and a name called Michael? Well, then now that's easy. Now I can call on God's protection and believe it's really listening because it shows up in the form of Archangel Michael. You know, now I can, if I call on God's healing, well, you know, can I see it? Can I feel it? But if I call on Archangel Raphael, who is the healing energy of the divine in a form, beautiful green energy, well, then I can relate to that better. So the angels say we are the divine aspects of the divine love that were given a form and a name so that you can relate to that aspect of love more easily. Mm. You know, the angels say, for example, if you said to a friend, I'm sending you all my love and compassion, they'd say, okay, thank you. But if you send them a bouquet of flowers that says, here's all my love and compassion, well, that's something they can relate to a bit more. It's more tangible. They see it. They're reminded of it. Hmm. So the angels say, we're not separate from the divine. You can pray to God and you get angels. You can ask the angels for help. You get God. It's like if you asked, you know, the body to send something to the cell, well, the nervous system and the brain are engaged and they're all connected. So the reason I like talking to angels is because as a human being, I like relating to their personalities and their humor. And, you know, it's the form that they take, but they know that they're one with God. And they like to say through a friend of mine, I have a friend who's a deep channel, Summer Bacon, and they like to say through her, the only difference between you and us is that we know we are you.
The difference between you and us is that we know we are you. Oh.
In other words, we know that we are the one energy and you are the one energy, very much like waves on an ocean are all the ocean. Every wave on an ocean is the ocean, but it has a separate form. It's not disconnected from the ocean. It's not separate from this wave over here. They're connected in their depth. Mm-hmm. So the angels, you know, you and I look across the room, but what's looking at itself, right?
That's beautiful.
And as we sink into those moments of presence, we become more open to connecting with any aspect of that bigger energy that sources us. Mm. Because what we're doing is we're quieting the mind that individuates, you know, that helps us become an individual wave. We're quieting the mind and we're starting to connect with the ocean underneath it. And in that space of quiet mind, we have access to the energies of just about anything.
That is interesting to me, the individuate thing. I've been thinking about that a lot recently. What does that mean, individuate? Because I hear people telling me sometimes, you know, that one should individuate in life. And I'm kind of...
Well, we're here to do that on this earth. We definitely are here to be a specific embodiment of the divine, to bring unique gifts to the planet, to experience unique things that help us grow and learn. And so individuate to me is to realize that, you know, maybe we're the ocean, but we have a uniqueness in our expression of that. So for example, God has chosen to express through you, through me in different ways, but, you know, and they're both very beautiful and useful. The angels say, for example, the body, you know, when that first sperm and egg join, those are, what do they call them? De-differentiated cells. They're generic cells.
Okay.
And because of the electrical potential, you know, in the little fetus or embryo, they start differentiating. They start turning into bone or blood or liver or heart or fingernails or whatever. So these generic cells start to take on an identity. And then you get this wonderfully complex, beautiful thing we call a body, where every single cell comes from the same source, but it's become unique in its function and its role, and there's a harmony to the whole thing. And humanity itself really is like that body. I grew up Catholic, they'd say body of Christ, and I think, what the heck does that mean? But now I understand that the human race, for example, and all of creation is literally the body of God, with its unique aspects that make it so intricate and complex and beautiful. The angels say the divine wanted to know all it could be, and so it started taking form in different forms. It's almost like God looks at itself and says, wow, is that who I am too? How magical. And I've had these moments where I wish I could be in this state all the time. And I know the masters are, where they knew the individual that they are, their unique function, their unique personality, their unique expression of God. But then you look around and all of a sudden, but there's the divine, there's the divine, there's the divine. I've had these modes where I've felt both the individual and the collective.
Oh, so you know the wave and the ocean.
Yeah, and it's not all the time by any means, but those are magical states of presence. And as you were looking like a baby looks, you start to slip into that just a little, because you're not really thinking, I'm individual, there's a rock, there's me, Crystal, whatever's in front of me right now. You're just feeling that sense of unity with all these individual expressions. And I think that is probably the ultimate earth experience. I don't know, but that's what the masters talk about a lot. If you read Yogananda's autobiography of a yogi, he puts it in plain English. And there are many masters that speak about this, that sense of, I'm an individual expression of divine energy. I have this beautiful uniqueness. The angels like to say, you're perfect as you are. Stop trying to be somebody else. They once said, a rose is perfect, a tulip is perfect, a crocus is perfect, a weed is perfect. The weed holds the dirt from sliding down the embankment. It has a purpose. The rose has a purpose. So everything has its unique purpose. And the best life we can live really is learning to be who we are, not overanalyzing it, but just saying, this is who I feel like being in the moment, And in that acceptance of self, even, we reach somewhat of a meditative state in our being. I've learned, for example, not to argue with myself when I have an emotion. Okay, I'm having this emotion. Let's just be with it, sit with it. What is it trying to tell me? It has a purpose. Like we were speaking of before, I wrote a newsletter on anger. Anger has a purpose. It tells you, change, do something differently. It's not meant to be dumped and aimed on everybody else. It's just a catalytic converter energy that teaches you. So we can even be meditative with our own emotions. We can just sit with them and not argue with them and not analyze them, and just say, okay, I'm feeling anger, and wait for it to reveal its message to you. So to go back to, how does this help you talk to angels? When we have a busy mind, we can't hear the natural energetic signals in the universe. It's like an app that's running on the computer, that, ever have a rogue app that won't go away and won't stop, it's preventing you from doing anything else. And
yeah, it takes up your memory, takes up your bandwidth.
Absolutely. And sometimes our minds can take up our memory and bandwidth, and they get in the way of the other natural signals that are coming to you from all of creation. So whether you're trying to hear angels, or you're trying to hear, the messages from nature, or your own emotions, you can't do it while your mind's busy. And the quieting it, any way you can quiet it. So I'm a firm believer that traditional meditation has far-reaching effects in the body, mind, and soul, and I support it completely for anyone who has the discipline to do it all the time. But I've just found that balance inside of myself of finding alternate methods of becoming present that work. And then when I have the luxury of a half hour to sit down and shut my eyes, I just slip into it very naturally, because I'll look around, and then I'll be like, yum, And it's kind of like a wave that goes, let me sink into the ocean. That's a visual I can use sometimes. Let me just sink into that, all that is. Let me just sink into it and relax. So you play with it till you find something that works for you.
Beautiful.
But the angels say we're here as embodiments of God's love. We're God's love that has taken a form with a unique function, very much as the heart has a certain function, the brain has a certain function. There are no less cells in the body. They started out from the same source. But they're individual too, yet they're part of this body.
Mhm.
So the angels say you can think of us as the nervous system of the universe, maybe. We convey the messages between the different parts, but we're no less part of this body.
Oh, that's really pretty. The nervous system of the universe.
Yeah. So it's just, they try to come up with ways, to say this. And I asked them once, I said, how come you could be with so many people all at once? Because that was another question, because I was still thinking very materially and solid. And Archangel Michael says, well, we're energies. So he said, for example, a song is energy, right? A song is frequency, a lot of notes put together. He said, say you had a million people that wanted to sing Amazing Grace or play it on their radio. Each one could call it up. It's an energy.
Sure.
Well, he said, I'm God's protection. And he said, so the minute someone prays for God's protection, they get me.
Mm.
And just like a song has a sound form, if you will, he has a form. So that's why angels you're not bothering them. And one of the common things I hear is, well, if I'm praying for something insignificant, isn't that taking away from someone else? And the angels say, not in an energetic universe, not at all.
Mm.
So if you ask for help, you're not robbing anyone else of that same help. We use metaphors that are material because that's what we relate to, like waves and oceans, but they're energy.
Mm.
So and as you start playing with this presence, playing of going into that no labeling, no judging mode, you start feeling more that sense of the energy moving around you. You'll start noticing that maybe if I get quiet minded in a room and I'm noticing somebody's disturbed, well, that's interesting. I'm feeling like agitated inside of myself too. Maybe I'm feeling the ripples in the pond here. Or you go out in nature and you feel that peace because it's a very serene energy. And you start noticing your energetic relationship with the universe around you. It's really good tool for empaths to start understanding when they're in their own space versus when they're feeling someone else. Because they start, because I've seen people walk into a room and all of a sudden they get agitated and they're like, what's wrong with me? But when they get present and they start looking around, then they'll notice, the little currents, so to speak, that people are involved in the room. And they'll start to say, oh, I'm picking up on this energy.
Mm. Mm.
And then they can breathe back into their own center. And a little trick, this is an aside, but for empaths is I imagine like a column of light from the heavens down to the earth. And I just imagine letting that pure energy cycle through me and being in my own center rather than having to, feel everything externally. It's kind of like I tuck my aura in and just bring it into the center. Yeah. And so as you get present, you start to notice things going on around you and you notice how they relate to what you feel inside of you. And I think that's another benefit of any sort of meditation is you start allowing yourself to be less influenced by the outer world and more influenced by your inner state of peace. You can observe chaos, but you don't have to participate in it. And that's helped me, when I do readings, because people come in with grief, deep grief and deep anger sometimes, their frustration, whatever, they're coming to me for help. So a lot of times they come in with intense emotions. And I have to stay in that state of peace to remain connected to the angels. So I remain present to love. I have learned to allow myself to just be with my clients rather than, oh my God, I've got to fix them. I've got to save them. I've got to, oh dear, don't let that come in my aura. None of that. I observe. And I stay in that space of love by just focusing on the inner light and I observe them. And in that state of presence with them, then I can hear the angel's message for them because I'm not letting my ego go, my God, I got to fix, I got to run, I've got to protect myself. La, la, la.
Oh.
And even if you're present with somebody like we are with each other in this conversation, it's deeper.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes an energetic conversation, not just an intellectual one. Yeah, I feel you. You're beautiful.
The timer went off and I was like, nope, the energy is flowing. I just put it away.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, but anyhow, I just hope that helps your listeners because, I certainly support traditional meditation. I love it now. It's like a vacation for me. But for the millions out there who can't just sit and quiet their thoughts, maybe some of these techniques can help them reap the benefits of meditation without having to do it traditionally.
I certainly hope so. That's beautiful and simple. And I think the background and experiences you've had in terms of, as you put it, being type A and being out in the scientific world and in the corporate world and all of this, like, that's so relatable for so many people.
Well, yeah, a lot of people, I jokingly say, live real lives with real jobs and real kids and real spouses and real nasty bosses sometimes. And, and it's unrealistic to have everybody sit in a cave on a mountain in pristine nature all day. I love it, but, it's not realistic. And so we have to find our ways to connect quickly. I used to run into the bathroom when I was in engineering and shut the door and just breathe, I needed to get connected to something higher.
I hope it didn't smell too bad.
No, well, that'll make your meditation quickly, right? If you're somewhere where the outer world is not so nice, you really want to go within.
Lots of motivation.
It was the only area where I could quiet, get away from everybody and shut that door for a minute and just breathe. You do what you can. I've got clients who have very chaotic households or angry spouses or whatever, and so they run into whatever room they can run into, and they just breathe for a few seconds.
Oh yeah, I used to do that as a child. I'd go into the bathroom and just lock the door, because who's going to disturb you in the bathroom?
Nobody. Exactly. Nobody knows you're trying to get present. If you can get present in there, you can meditate anywhere, right? I know that's kind of funny, but it's true. See, a lot of people do that and they don't admit it. Where else can we get right? That's funny. You do what you can, right?
Well, this has been so beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you or the angels would like to add?
Let me just ask. Well, this is the thing. They said meditation in any form is a tool that you use to get peaceful enough to connect with yourself, your deepest self, the true self within you, the self that ultimately is divine, but may just be the part of you that's hungry or tired or needs something. And so use it as the tool, not the goal, is what they're saying. The goal is not reaching giant, blissful, no mind spaces. Those are wonderful. But why do we want to reach those? Because we want to connect with ourselves. And the angel's saying you can connect with your deepest, truest self when you have a mystical moment watching the ocean, when you look into your baby's eyes. That deep self is available everywhere. They'll challenge me at times to say, okay, this is not, the world's prettiest rock, but look at yourself, Anne. See if you can find something beautiful about that, because that's where that divine is in everything. And so meditation is the means, not the end. And that's what they just wanted to say. So they said, be easy on yourselves. They're begging the listeners, don't worry if you don't, reach ultimate states of bliss in meditation. Just try. A little more peace is better than no peace. And it's the funniest thing. If you just keep doing little bits, you get there without trying too hard. So it's removing the pressure.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Thank you. You have a beautiful message.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Tell us the teeniest bit about your newsletter so people can stay in touch with you, because I love your newsletter.
Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I channel a weekly messages from Anne and the Angels. I channel a little angel message, and then I add at the end another message from me as to how I attempt to apply that in my own life with some very human, practical, grounded tips and tools that people can do throughout the week to make little incremental changes and more peace, more joy, more love in their lives. And it's free, and it's on my website, which is visionsofheaven.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Real pleasure.
You too.